The Oil Jar Mystery, an American Tale. The Vanishing Act. Jake Murphy woke up to absolute silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence you'd expect on a Sunday morning in Cedar Falls, Montana. This was the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind that screams, "Something's wrong." Jake had lived in the same small farmhouse for 37 years. Every single morning, without fail, his old rooster cluck would crow at exactly 6:15 a.m., rain or shine, summer or winter. Cluck was more reliable than his neighbor's atomic clock, but not today. Jake stumbled to his kitchen window, rubbing his eyes. His jaw dropped. The massive oil drum he'd bought just yesterday, the one that cost him his last $200, was gone. Vanished, like it had never existed. "What in the Sam Hill?" Jake muttered, pulling on his worn denim jacket. He stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The spot where his oil drum had sat was empty, except for two perfect circles in the dirt where it had been. No drag marks, no footprints, nothing. This wasn't just any oil drum. This was Jake's entire business plan. He'd bought 50 gallons of premium motor oil, planning to sell it to the local garage owners at a profit. It was supposed to be his ticket out of living paycheck to paycheck. Now it was gone.
The investigation begins. Jake's first stop was his neighbor Pete's house. Pete Richardson was the unofficial town gossip. If a bird sneezed in Cedar Falls, Pete knew about it within an hour. "Pete," Jake called out, knocking on the screen door, "you seen anything strange this morning?" Pete emerged with a steaming cup of coffee and a knowing grin. "Strange? Well, that depends on what you call strange, Jake." "My oil drum's missing, 50 gallons worth." Pete's eyebrows shot up. "The one you were bragging about at Murphy's bar last night?" Jake's stomach sank. He had been pretty loud about his business plan the night before. Half the town probably heard him talking about his liquid gold. "Yeah, that one," Jake admitted. Pete leaned against his porch railing. "Well, I didn't see anyone take your drum, but I did see something interesting around 3 a.m. 3 men in a beat-up red pickup truck, license plate covered with mud. They were driving real slow past your place." "What'd they look like?" "Too dark to see faces, but they didn't look local. One was real tall, skinny as a rail. Another was short and stocky. The third guy was just average, I guess." Jake felt a spark of hope mixed with anger. "Which way they go?" "Toward Highway 89. Could have gone anywhere from there."
The plan forms. Jake spent the next hour walking around town, asking questions. The story was always the same. 3 strangers in a red pickup, driving around town in the middle of the night like they owned the place. By 10 a.m., Jake had formed a plan. It wasn't the most conventional plan, but Jake Murphy had never been conventional. He walked into Sal's hardware store with a purpose. "Morning, Sal. I need some paint. The brightest, most eye-catching paint you've got." Sal Hernandez looked puzzled. "Paint? What kind of project you working on, Jake?" "The kind that's gonna catch some thieves." 20 minutes later, Jake walked out with 3 cans of neon orange paint, 2 large cardboard signs, and a mischievous grin. The trap. That afternoon, Jake set up shop in the town square with the most ridiculous display Cedar Falls had ever seen. He'd painted an old dented trash can bright orange and stuck a sign on it that read, "Rare Vintage Oil Container, $500, original 1995 design, very valuable." Next to it, he placed his old work boots with a sign that said, "Lucky Boots, worn by lottery winner, $300, guaranteed good fortune." The third item was his grandmother's broken umbrella. "Antique weather protection device, $450, over 20 years old." Jake sat on a folding chair behind his merchandise, wearing his biggest smile and loudest voice. "Step right up, folks. Genuine vintage items for sale. These prices won't last long." The audience gathered. Word spread fast in Cedar Falls. Within an hour, half the town had gathered around Jake's impromptu yard sale, barely containing their laughter. "Jake, you feeling all right?" asked Martha from the diner. "That trash can ain't worth $5, let alone $500. "Martha, you just don't understand value. This here container has history. It's held everything from kitchen scraps to, well, more kitchen scraps." Old Charlie from the gas station chuckled. "And those boots? I seen you wear them every day for the past 10 years. "Exactly," Jake exclaimed. "That's what makes them lucky. I've survived 10 years wearing these babies." The crowd was eating it up. Everyone except 3 men standing at the edge of the square, trying to look casual while studying Jake's setup. Jake had spotted them immediately. One tall and skinny, one short and stocky, one perfectly average, just like Pete had described. Taking the bait. The 3 strangers whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing at Jake's display. Jake could practically see the wheels turning in their heads. After about an hour, the tall one approached. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound friendly. "You're really selling that trash can for $500? Jake nodded enthusiastically. "Sir, you've got a good eye. That's not just any trash can. That's a genuine 1995 model. They don't make them like this anymore." The stranger looked skeptical but intrigued. "And people actually buy this stuff?" "Oh, absolutely. You'd be surprised how many collectors are out there. Just yesterday, I sold a 50-gallon oil drum to a collector for $800. "$800 for an oil drum?" the short one asked. "Yep, some people know value when they see it." Jake leaned back in his chair. "Of course, that sale helped me buy these rare items I'm selling today." The average-looking one stepped forward. "Where'd you keep that oil drum? Must have been valuable to store somewhere safe." Jake smiled innocently. "Oh, I just kept it right outside my house. No need for security in a nice town like Cedar Falls."
The setup. As the sun began to set, Jake packed up his merchandise and headed home. But he didn't go straight to bed. Instead, he prepared for his unwelcome guests. He placed another oil drum, this one empty and borrowed from Sal's hardware store, in the exact spot where his original drum had been stolen. But this time, he had a few modifications. Inside the drum, Jake placed a small Bluetooth speaker connected to his phone. He also rigged up a simple motion sensor from his old security system, the kind that chimes when someone opens a door. Then Jake hid in his shed with a perfect view of the drum and settled in to wait. The thieves return. At 2:47 a.m., Jake heard the soft rumble of a truck engine. He peeked through the shed window and saw the same red pickup truck Pete had described, creeping down his driveway with its headlights off. The 3 men got out quietly, using hand signals to communicate. They moved like professionals, which made Jake both impressed and annoyed. These weren't just random opportunists, they were experienced thieves. The tall one kept watch, while the other 2 approached the oil drum. They circled it, checking for any signs of alarm systems or cameras. "Looks clear," the short one whispered. "Same setup as before," agreed the average one. "This guy's either really trusting or really stupid." Jake smiled to himself. "He'd take really clever for $500, Alex." The 2 thieves grabbed the drum and started lifting it. The moment they moved it, Jake's motion sensor triggered. But instead of a chime, the Bluetooth speaker inside the drum erupted with Jake's recorded voice at maximum volume. "Hello there, gentlemen. Thanks for visiting Jake's late-night delivery service."
The confrontation. The 3 thieves found themselves trapped in Jake's yard with a truck that tilted at an odd angle and an oil drum that wouldn't stop talking. All right, the average-looking one called out, raising his hands. "We give up." Jake kept his flashlight trained on them. "Smart choice. Now I believe you have something that belongs to me." "We don't know what you're talking about," the tall one said. The drum chose that moment to broadcast another one of Jake's messages. "By the way, I've already called Sheriff Martinez. He should be here any minute." The thieves looked at each other with growing panic. "Look," the short one said, "maybe we can work something out. What do you want?" Jake pretended to consider this. "Well,
I want my 50 gallons of motor oil back. And I want to know why you thought Cedar Falls was a good place to start a thieving operation. The backstory. The three men, who introduced themselves as Danny, Rick, and Tom, had been traveling across Montana, targeting small towns where people were trusting enough to leave valuable items unguarded. "We heard you talking about that oil drum at the bar," Danny admitted. "Sounded like easy money." "Nothing personal," Rick added, "just business." Tom, who seemed to be their leader, was more defensive. "Look, we're not hurting anybody, just taking stuff that's lying around." Jake leaned against his porch railing. "Lying around? That oil was my entire business plan. You didn't just steal some old junk, you stole my future." The weight of his words seemed to hit the thieves. For the first time, they looked genuinely uncomfortable. Sheriff Martinez arrives. Right on cue, Sheriff Martinez's patrol car pulled into Jake's driveway, lights flashing. Elena Martinez had been Cedar Falls sheriff for 8 years, and she'd never seen anything quite like this scene. "Jake," she called out, stepping from her car, "your message said something about catching oil thieves with a talking drum." Jake grinned. "Sheriff, meet Danny, Rick, and Tom. They've been running a traveling theft service across Montana. I believe they have some property that belongs to me." Sheriff Martinez looked at the three dejected men, then at the bright orange drum still occasionally broadcasting messages, then at Jake's setup. "You know what, Jake? I should probably arrest you for disturbing the peace with that noisemaker. But first, let's talk about this oil situation." The confession. Under Sheriff Martinez's questioning, the three thieves admitted to stealing Jake's oil drum. They'd sold it to a garage in Billings for quick cash, far less than Jake had paid for it. 50 gallons of premium motor oil, Tom admitted. Got $300 for it. Jake winced. He'd paid $200 and planned to sell it for $400. Now it was gone for $300 to someone else entirely. "Where's the money?" Sheriff Martinez asked. "Spent most of it on gas and food. Got maybe $50 left between us." Danny pulled out a crumpled 20 and some change. "This is all I got." The sheriff looked at Jake. "It's your call, Jake. I can arrest them for theft, but getting your oil back, that's going to be complicated." Jake's proposition. Jake studied the three men for a long moment. They looked tired, desperate, and frankly pathetic. Not exactly the criminal masterminds he'd imagined. "How long you boys been doing this?" he asked. "Couple months," Tom admitted. "Lost our jobs at the mining company when it shut down. Been trying to make ends meet." "And stealing seemed like the best option?" The three men looked ashamed, but didn't answer. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Sheriff, what if we tried something different?" "Different how?" "These boys owe me for 50 gallons of oil, plus the trouble they caused. That's about $500, give or take." Jake looked at the thieves. "You got $500? "You know we don't," Danny said. "Then you're gonna work it off."
The unusual sentence. Sheriff Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Work it off?" "That's right. I've got a small farm here, and Lord knows I could use the help. These three can work off their debt, minimum wage, 8 hours a day, until they've paid back what they owe." "And then what?" Tom asked suspiciously. "Then you're free to go, but you'll have some honest money in your pockets and maybe some skills that'll help you get real jobs." Sheriff Martinez liked the idea. It's unconventional, but if Jake's willing to drop the charges and you three are willing to work... The thieves looked at each other. They didn't have many options. "What kind of work?" Rick asked. "Farm work. Fence mending, crop planting, animal care. Nothing you can't learn." Danny spoke up. "What's to stop us from just running off?" Jake smiled. "Nothing. But if you do, the sheriff here will put out a warrant for your arrest. Plus, you'll still be broke and homeless. This way, you get a chance to start over." The first day. The next morning, Jake's new 3 employees showed up at his farm looking uncertain and slightly hungover. Jake had prepared a list of tasks and some basic ground rules. Rule number 1, he announced, is that we start each day at 6 a.m. Rule number 2 is that you work until the job's done, not until the clock says you can quit. And rule number 3 is that I don't tolerate lying, stealing, or laziness. Tom crossed his arms. And what do you not tolerate? Jake grinned. Complaints about the food. My cooking ain't fancy, but it's filling. The first job was repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm 3 weeks earlier. Jake demonstrated the proper way to set fence posts, string wire, and secure the connections. Seems simple enough, Rick said. 4 hours later, Rick was singing a different tune. His hands were blistered, his back ached, and he had a new appreciation for honest work. Learning curves. Danny turned out to have a natural aptitude for mechanical work. When Jake's old tractor started acting up, Danny spent an hour tinkering under the hood and got it running better than it had in months. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Jake asked, genuinely impressed. "My dad was a mechanic before he passed. Guess I picked up more than I thought." Rick, despite his initial complaints, proved to be excellent with the animals. Jake's small herd of cattle seemed to trust him instinctively, and even his ornery old rooster Cluck didn't try to attack Rick. Tom was the slowest to adapt. He complained about the early hours, the physical labor, and the simple food. But gradually, even he began to find satisfaction in completing tasks and seeing the results of his work. The community responds. Word spread quickly through Cedar Falls about Jake's unusual arrangement with the 3 former thieves. Reactions were mixed. Some people, like Martha from the diner, thought Jake was crazy to trust them. "They'll rob you blind and disappear in the middle of the night," she warned. Others, like Pete Richardson, admired Jake's approach. "Sometimes people just need a second chance," he said. Sheriff Martinez kept a close eye on the situation, dropping by Jake's farm regularly to check on things. After 2 weeks, she had to admit the arrangement was working better than expected. "How do you keep them motivated?" she asked Jake one afternoon. "Same way you motivate anybody. Give them a purpose and treat them with respect. They're not bad men, Elena. They just made some bad choices." The halfway point. After 6 weeks, Jake did some calculations. At minimum wage, working 8 hours a day, the 3 men had earned back about 2/3 of what they owed him. But something interesting had happened. They also improved his farm in ways he hadn't expected. The irrigation system was more efficient, the fences were stronger, and his small vegetable garden was producing better crops than it had in years. "You know," Jake told Sheriff Martinez during one of her visits, "I'm starting to think I got the better end of this deal." "How so?" "Look around. My place hasn't looked this good in years. And those 3? They're different people than they were 6 weeks ago." Sheriff Martinez had noticed the change, too. The men walked straighter, spoke with more confidence, and had a sense of purpose that had been missing before. So, what happens when they've worked off their debt? Jake had been wondering the same thing. An unexpected offer. The answer came from an unlikely source. Sal Hernandez from the hardware store stopped by Jake's farm one afternoon with a proposition. "Jake, I've been watching those 3 boys a year's work," Sal said. "They know their stuff. Danny especially. He fixed my truck's transmission last week in half the time it would have taken the garage." "Danny's got a gift with engines," Jake agreed. "That's what I'm thinking. I'm getting too old to handle all the repair work that comes through my shop. Been considering hiring someone to help with the mechanical side of things." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You thinking of offering Danny a job?" "All 3 of them, actually. Danny for mechanical work, Rick for deliveries and animal supplies. He's got away with livestock. And Tom? Well, Tom's got a good head for numbers. My bookkeeping's been a mess for years." It was an interesting proposition. Sal's hardware store was the heart of Cedar Falls' agricultural community. A job there would provide steady income and a chance to build a real life in the community. The decision.
That evening, Jake called the three men together to discuss Sal's offer. "It's your choice," he said. "You got about 2 more weeks of work to pay off your debt to me. After that, you're free to go wherever you want. But Sal's offering you a chance to stay here and build something." Danny was the first to speak. "What do you think we should do, Jake?" "I think you should do whatever makes you feel like the best version of yourselves." Rick nodded slowly. "Cedar Falls isn't a bad place. People here give you a chance to prove yourself." Tom looked around Jake's kitchen, where they'd shared hundreds of meals over the past 2 months. "It's the first place that's felt like home in a long time." "Then it sounds like you've got your answer," Jake said. The new beginning. 2 weeks later, Danny, Rick, and Tom officially finished working off their debt to Jake. Sheriff Martinez was there for the occasion, along with Sal, Pete, Martha, and several other townspeople. "Gentlemen," Jake announced, "you've paid your debt in full. You're free men." Instead of leaving, the 3 former thieves had decided to accept Sal's job offer and make Cedar Falls their permanent home. "You know," Tom said to Jake privately, "we never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For seeing something in us that we didn't see in ourselves." Jake clapped him on the shoulder. "You always had it. You just needed a reason to let it show." Full circle. 6 months after the oil drum theft, Jake's life had changed in ways he never expected. His farm was more prosperous than it had been in years, thanks partly to the improvements made during Danny, Rick, and Tom's stay. More importantly, he'd gained 3 friends and the satisfaction of knowing he'd helped turn 3 lives around. Danny had proposed to a woman he'd met at the hardware store, Sarah, a local teacher who appreciated his gentle nature with both engines and people. Rick had saved enough money to visit his daughter in Denver and was working toward joint custody. Tom had enrolled in online accounting classes and was helping several local businesses organize their finances. The oil drum that started it all sat in Jake's shed, now serving as storage for various farm tools. Sometimes Jake would look at it and smile, remembering how a $200 loss had led to something much more valuable. The moral of the story. 1 year later, Jake was invited to speak at the Cedar Falls Community Center about his experience with restorative justice. "A lot of people ask me why I didn't just press charges and let the law handle those 3 men, he said to the assembled crowd. "The truth is, sometimes the law can't fix what's really broken. What was broken wasn't just the trust between them and the community. What was broken was their belief that they could be better than their worst moments. When someone steals from you, you have a choice. You can focus on punishment, or you can focus on restoration. Punishment might make you feel better in the short term, but restoration can change lives." Jake looked out at the audience, which included Danny, Rick, and Tom, now respected members of the community. The real treasure was never that oil drum. The real treasure was discovering that people can change when you give them a reason to want to change. Sometimes the best way to stop a thief is to help them find something worth more than what they were trying to steal. Epilogue. 5 years later, the great oil drum heist of Cedar Falls, the town had grown and changed, but at its heart, it remained a place where people looked out for each other and believed in second chances. Jake Murphy's farm had become one of the most successful in the county. He'd expanded his operation and now employed several people full-time. His original oil drum business plan had evolved into something much bigger, a feed and supply cooperative that served the entire region. Danny Rodriguez, he'd taken his wife's name, ran the mechanical division of Sal's Hardware, which had expanded into a full-service repair shop. He and Sarah had 2 children and were active in the church. Rick Thompson had custody of his daughter every other month and was saving money to move closer to Denver. He'd become Cedar Falls' unofficial animal whisperer, helping local farmers with difficult livestock. Tom Bradley had earned his accounting certification and opened his own bookkeeping service. He'd also started a financial literacy program for people in difficult circumstances, people like he used to be. Sheriff Martinez still patrolled the town, but crime had dropped significantly. She attributed this partly to the community's approach of addressing root causes rather than just punishing symptoms. And Jake had learned that sometimes the best investment you can make isn't in oil drums or farm equipment or business plans. Sometimes the best investment you can make is in people. The old oil drum still sat in his shed, now painted bright blue and filled with children's toys. Jake's nephew visited every summer, and the drum had become his favorite hiding spot during games of hide and seek. Every time Jake saw it, he remembered that fateful morning when he'd woken up to find it stolen. He thought that day was going to be one of the worst of his life. Instead, it turned out to be one of the best. Because sometimes, when you lose something valuable, you find something even more precious in return. And that's a treasure no one can ever steal from you. The end.